All right, welcome to another episode of what I've been calling the Jenna Hurst podcast and really discovering just this magical world of having conversations with my friends on the internet and just what we can create together for what feels like for right now is an audience of none. And I know people are out there. So if you are watching, we would love to know you exist by commenting, liking, linking, all the things. Let us know that you exist. And for today, I don't think we really have I don't have a direct direction that I'm headed. I know you mentioned you're in the world of managing adrenal fatigue and just the impact to the nervous system. So slow and steady wins a race is what you were saying. And I just really relate to that today too. I'm in some ways energetically impacted today. Uh, and so I want to say, how do I want to start this? I mean, I guess actually that as a topic, I'd love to start there. How you be with your body and yourself when you're impacted, whether energetically, adrenal, nervous system, where there's this hit to what you want to be and where you're at, and there's a divide. How to be in that slow and steady void space. If you have anything that shows up there, I can add stuff too. That kind of shows up as a place to start.
So for me, it's like I have I've had to learn through being told. So the frustration in my head, my imagination, I have this vision for what the future is, for
Mm,
what I could be doing. And so I sort of allowed myself to be pushed to basically do more physically than I was able to. And then have to rest for 2 days and go, well, all right, then I've got to strip everything right back. But it's a process of elimination. So it's because of the amount of coffee that I've drunk in the past however many years, part of my
mm,
lifestyle. Living on the streets, it's like coffee is rife with people that live on the streets because it's like it helps them to stay alert and all that. But anyway, it was only when I removed the coffee that the evidence presented itself.
mm,
So it's like I've just tried all of the things which are harmful to my physical health, my addictions.
mhm,
It's like of elimination, or it's I've just had to allow it to calibrate so that coffee was evident to be the first thing that has to. Well, alcohol out, but that's I haven't
mhm.
really struggled with it. It's just floating around. So yeah, and I was building up momentum, doing a bit more physically each day, and then I stopped drinking coffee, and it just sort of wiped me out. And
Mhm.
now settle for going for a walk as the bare minimum.
Mhm.
And even if I spend the whole day in bed, it's okay.
Mm.
You can't force yourself. It's like this mind, body, spirit triangulation. And the body will always have the last say in terms of our physical capabilities, obviously.
Mm. Mm.
So learning to rest when I'm pushing myself to do more, probably the is half of the battle.
I really heard, well, someone recently told me too, just that going into that void space, which is so much that hitting zero, what I'll sometimes call my nothing days, the bare minimum is nothing. Like unless my body's making me do it, I'm not going to do it. It's almost like the mental construct of how we've been programmed, because that's like the antithesis of it's like you are going to die in some ways is what your body is yelling at you when you do nothing because of what we've been learning to do and to rewire the neurons. I was even saying this to Aaron yesterday too, like we're sleeping a lot right now. There's been noticing that like 10 or so hours and I'm like that makes sense. Like our bodies and our brains and our nervous system heal the most when we're sleeping. And so being able to be at rest is going to be the most impact. It's just leaning into that and actually like leaning back into that rest when we have the system that's like that means death in some ways to our system. And so being able to actually receive that and just be in the quote unquote, I'll sometimes call it potato mode, and learning what shows up in the body is like that's what has to shift. That's what has to flow out. I kind of almost see like a backed up system or backup pipe where you got to like push water through to be able to get some of those beliefs to come out because it's just simply the whole belief of you're lazy, that impact neurologically when you're speaking that self over yourself, like it is a form of abuse when that's the internal dialogue that's speaking over you. And I don't know too how this shows up. Safety is something that I'm super passionate on, and the neurology that is you have access when you have your needs met. So I don't know how long for you it was, what your life was when it came to living on the streets, and what safety was like, or your relationship with safety. I don't know if you have anything there that you would add or say, just past life to where you're at now, or where you see yourself in the future, kind of how safety plays in that role.
But bizarrely, I actually have felt safer living on the streets because if you keep yourself to yourself, then you've got legs and you can always move
Mm,
away, right? And find a little space. And somehow the um having a house doesn't equate to safety
mm,
so much as you would think.
mhm,
Um, I guess that's through obviously my experience of
mhm,
living in a family home, which wasn't wasn't terrible, but it wasn't peaceful.
mhm,
That's just our nervous system is what collects the information and activates the similar states and tries to convince us that similar is on the horizon or whatever.
mhm,
So I think it just all of it is prompting us to go beyond the physical,
mm,
to cultivate a spiritual strength, to know that true safety is not of this world. We're protected by things that we sometimes have no awareness of and can't see.
I feel that fully. And there is that if you're hooked into what is quote unquote delusional safety, that can be taken away. And so there's not that foundation that's sitting underneath. And there is that surrender and trust. And I want to think it's a post you did that I saw that was like, how little can you be on, and showing the discipline that can come with how the least amount that you can be on, and the surrender into nothing, and then trusting what shows up, and really see for me too the whole concept of spirituality being this invisible reality. Like that is what's there. It's like I can't, I mean, in some ways too, scriptural, however we see it, the it's here, you can't see it, or it's just this barely perceived experience. It's this discovery of intuition, this nuanced reality that's beyond the comprehension of the brain. It's like discovered in the present moment. And I don't know, because I don't want to walk into this situation ignorant. How do I want to say this? I know for me and where I physically live, or where I lived before, the concept of living on the streets came with a lot of risk to personal safety. Um, at the same time, this like you now know you can provide for yourself in all scenarios. Is that something you would say is true for you now based on the life you've lived?
Yeah, absolutely. It's uh, proper root chakra stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, if you realize that even if the supermarkets are closed, that there is food because you can
Mhm,
always get out of the bin, right? Or yeah, all of that or whatever, provide for yourself, which then you're not going to be dependent on anybody else. And being dependent on other people is what has caused an imbalance and a sense of not being safe in the past, right? Because if somebody's providing and providing and providing, and then they withhold that as an act of whatever,
mhm,
then where does that leave you?
mhm,
But also, the main reason the main reason that I wasn't safe on the streets was because I was just trying to, like I have done all my life, serve everywhere, see a job, do a job. But you can't
mhm,
do that. It takes so much effort just to keep your energy up on the streets because the streets will swallow everything that it can, you know?
mhm, mhm, mhm. I feel that. And the for me, it's all been very much exploration with a very huge safety net. And so I have no actual lived experience. It's just more of knowing the world I was in, the trauma I went through made it so it was like I no longer could fit into the white privilege box I did before. And now I can like understand from the sense of how this happens. Like I can see the mechanism. I can see the vortex out of society, the ostracization, the kind of the see you as a leper because of XYZ. You're no longer safe. You're perceived as this way because this has happened to you. And how, in my experience with people in this world, it's like inserting back into society is not an option. And it's like there is a world that's getting created for those that have been ostracized. And I see that, at least for me, is where I'm gravitating towards. I'm more drawn to those quote unquote underprivileged, whatever they've been through, because there's a reality, there's a realness, there's a resource, there's a desire to come together where this prior life, the white privileged, in my context, the world I live in, um, is like it's so threatened that you can't even survive if you wanted to. It's like if you threaten this illusion, then it's like, kind of Matrix style, you become an attack. Where it's like this is all creativity, quite honestly, is how I see it. Well, yes, it's in survival, and yes, it's life and death, and yes, it's a whole thing. It's just you reach the end of yourself and you have to depend on God. You have to depend on something else because you don't have it. You're beyond yourself. And so that's where I think I get excited, um, somewhat ignorantly, because of what's possible with those who have had met the end of themselves and become resourced, and like what is inside of you because of what you've been through and who you know yourself to be now. It's like that's someone I want to have a conversation with, compared to the love and light, white privileged, like I've never had it hard and I act like I know conversation. And I'm kind of feel like I'm not really in both worlds or either world. It's just more of I want to listen and understand and find resource to meet needs, because I do believe there are real needs people have to come together. And this, how do we come together, is so much that I get just feel over my head on. And again, knowing that's where we begin. So I don't know. I don't think anything was in that. That's just what was coming through.
Well, I get the gist of it, and see, there's a lot of dangers that are prevalent in the spiritual community, and I'm bored of even using that as a catchphrase, but we all know what I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
because people want to bond through their shared spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's completely elitist. It disregards the people who are there are real people on the streets, right? All right. Some of them are past the point of health because
Mm-hmm.
they're institutionalized and they find safety in numbers on the streets, and that's not you can't do that because that's just the streets, right? In a strong group of people, that's just pure addiction,
Mm-hmm.
codependent, all of that stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
really dangerous because if you bond to a group on the streets and then get evicted from that group with no skills, where are you?
Mm.
So it sort of ties into that post that the video I made earlier about how I will be offering my services for free now.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people in the spiritual community, they're charging their friends extortionate amounts of money to connect just so that they can share their gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
we're just gonna all right then, well, we'll all go and live in the forest, right? And we'll be spiritual. Fuck the world. Never mind the fact there are children, homeless, elderly people who are very vulnerable and need some support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So
being able to sift and sort through that, I really see too, because you do raise such a valid point. Like in the same aspect of codependent and an ecosystem that you can't get in, there's also that same ecosystem. I mean, in every little world you're going to have, there are those codependent ecosystems of really a term that I've recently been studying is this hierarchy, power, authority, creativity that, or I mean, no creativity. It's just cause effect, positive, negative. We have an ecosystem that stays. And then I do see those of us that are outliers that I kind of think, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Divergent, kind of gives me that concept too. It's like this concept of those that are outliers that are like, okay, how do we create a community and learn from what doesn't work, and also be in a community that we're continuing to learn. We're continuing to learn what doesn't work. Like we've learned that we have to stay open and not just say that's the status quo or that's what we do, so we do it. It's like being able to have open dialogue, have feedback, have discussion, have dialogue. And I think at the core, what in some ways we perceive democracy to be actually an embodiment of that. And I really saw the word you say, skills, like being able to actually have skills and knowing where you are lacking in skills and that not being a bad thing. It's just that I'm resourced here, you're resourced there. This is easy for me, this is easy for you. I don't know if I've shared this with you before. I had a statement that I used to say in my community is that together we can take care of ourselves. Like it does require others. And there's many of us who have quote unquote done it alone in one way, shape, or form. And we've learned how hard it is. And we don't want it to be hard for people like that. We want to enlighten it. We want to be easy. We want to be a resource because we do know what it's like to do it the hard way. And we want it for people to not be hard if that's an option, if that translates to.
Yeah, but it seems like that is going to be the inevitable result of our work because we did it on our own
Mhm,
because we know the dangers of doing it, being reliant or codependent on people. So it's like the middle ground. We have the wisdom of the experience of doing it alone,
mhm,
plus the, the foresight to know that we don't, people aren't going to be codependent on us because we can't allow it.
mhm, mhm,
So this is, that's new. That's new information right there.
mhm. Yeah, and I really, how do I see codependency? The distinction between, oh, I can't, I wrote it somewhere and I can't see it just yet. It's this concept of just attachment and connection, where it's like we are connected. As a result, we have a synergistic co-creative dynamic because we're connected, compared to attached is there's no me without you. I can't be well if you are, whatever. That's like codependency in many ways is how you are completely controls how I am. And so there's no stability inside of self because you change, I change, I'm at the effect. The picture I have that comes through often too for this is like a snow globe and just how codependency is a snow globe where it's like two people that are floating the snow globe. You shake the snow globe and then it's just like everyone's shaking around plus the chaos of the environment. Where it's like, how do you get yourself grounded to where you can see, oh, this is a codependent person that's not attached firmly to self and not able to stay regulated themselves. This is what I'm dealing with. How do I have boundaries? How do I create an environment? How do I care for myself? And that in and of itself is a whole discovery process and trying to translate that to others. It's like we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we need if we don't know that we need it. So like how do you make it conceptual so people can even see that they need what we're talking about because it's invisible and like it's so tricky.
But it is because we reached that conclusion on
Mm,
our own.
mhm,
So ideally, everybody else would be doing that. So if we're putting in measures to draw boundaries, but
mhm,
not knowing that we can't communicate effectively why and how the boundaries are there, then
mhm,
that person potentially is just going to be confused, going to scapegoat us for blah, 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 rather than the line of inquiry which leads to them going, oh, okay, or they'll take it out on themselves and think that it's something that they've done wrong, or I've been that person
mhm,
because I put other people on a pedestal because I was codependent on them and they allowed it, right, by presenting themselves as like a healer, for example, right.
mhm,
I every now and again felt like I had no choice but to go to because they had bigged themselves up. They didn't once remind me of my innate power.
mhm. I mean, that right there is the core of what I want at the root is how do we come together where there is this need for leadership. I think anyone who's listening to this, yourself, everyone, like we're leaning in and leading the charge when it's like everything prior to now has been pedestalizing people. And it's like this leadership is look to me, I'm going to tell you. And it's like almost an experience for me of self-sabotage of like I take myself off the pedestal as quickly as I can with someone. I want to fail someone in a way as early as possible to see how do they respond, how do they react when I don't hold up to their image because they expect me to be a certain way and I'm not going to fit that image. I'm not going to fit that mold. And yes, I'm going to disappoint you. I can do it sometimes dramatically, whether it be conscious or unconscious, I don't know. It's just, I can like almost feel it in my energy when that codependent energy comes in wanting me to be a certain way. I'm like, whoever I'm talking to, I am not perfect. Like I am in the same boat you are. Like we have different, life experiences that present us in different ways. just because of XYZ does not make me a different human. Like I am still nervous system, human, whatever we're doing. I really do see we're all the same at the end of the day. It's just how we're perceived is what's different collectively.
Well, when people can realize the nature of reality in what somebody sees in another is absolutely present in them because they wouldn't be able to see it otherwise,
That. Yes.
then that solves everything, doesn't it? And then
That.
that's interdependency.
Mhm.
That's what it is, really. It's just activating certain things within each other through that means. But it's like the old way of being, which the codependency is just formulaic, and we
Yeah.
rely on
Mm-hmm.
formulas, right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
we know the equation and the answer, if we want the answer, we're going to apply the formula. But interdependency is just fluid and
Mm.
dynamic. There's no set rules. It's just we be who we are in any moment, and it's complementary.
So good. And I really see that moving from the quote unquote 3D survival, archaic, this, cause effect, whatever that is, us transcending that to be able to be in creativity, to be able to be in the chaos and be the source and the creator and have these roles, which causes us to stand in our true divine power, which is outrageous when you actually can conceptualize the power that we do have inside. I love that you brought that point up. Something I geek out so hard is like, use me as a mirror. Like, what do you see in me? Great, that's you. Like, literally, you get to see yourself by whatever you see in me. And we are mirrors for each other. And this, like, there's no me without you, as it's like all you're seeing is yourself. Like, whatever that is that's you inside of you that's creating me that way. I can never be or understand how you see me. I can get understandings when you communicate it, like fractions of it. It's just I never can get that full picture of what it's like for your experience of me. Same with you'll never understand my full experience of you. And just this, when you can really see the goodness of humanity and what we truly are at our core, it's like it's an honor and a privilege to be in the room with anybody. Like every single person is God source embodied fractal experience. Like it is humbling to be able to be connected to another person. And that's what God's choosing to be on the planet. Like that is, yeah, that's just God's picking to be you on the planet. And I get excited that I get to see God expressed through Benjamin. Like that's how I live and see and just get excited with, yeah, just get excited to see.
But this is exactly why I get angry about people,
Mhm.
even to organize a festival or a gathering and sell tickets, right? It's like charging for God or a mentor, right? So it's like, oh, welcome to you. That'll be $200, please.
That's that. God doesn't charge us to be connected to him. Like God isn't like, hey, you need to pay $200 before I'll connect you.
It's just there's a lot of gatekeeping,
Yeah.
but we do it to ourselves as well, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I think that is that, and I've been in contemplation about the whole conversation around money and really do see the ecosystem we have created requires money. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do this with my human. So as a result, the things that I do need to have money. And we've created this dichotomy where I do action, it needs to get paid. And we've yet to surrender into or truly understand that there are ways, and in many ways, how do I want to say this? It's almost like we have to fail really hard to figure out the solution that we need, is kind of my personal experience. It's like I'm willing to go all in and quote unquote bankrupt myself so that we can see what's needed. So this is a solution for other people. And that's much of what my passion is. And why I've gone in so fully is like, I have to find the solution. So I have to be the quote unquote problem to find what exists as a solution. In many ways, with what we're creating with We Are the Full Spectrum, is the desire to be a solution. I just don't know what that is yet. And it's going to come from conversation. It's going to come from more people who have done it. And it's like, what do you see? I don't know. Like, how do we come together? It is much of an I don't know, and being able to stay empowered in that is tricky because it is a huge, I mean, to me, it's new. Maybe it exists out there in other pockets and we'll just keep going until we find the solution. It just doesn't seem like the solution exists yet. Like we are in the creation unfolding of it.
Well, probably at a point in human history, the solution was just lived very successfully, very basic,
Hmm.
ancient. You know, the new way is the old way to some degree because the indigenous people were not incorrect in their reasoning because they're fully connected to the
Hmm.
source, Mother Earth.
Hmm.
So they're not really troubled much
Hmm.
until civilization came along and
Yeah.
switched everything on its head.
Yeah, and I actually saw that in something too. It was saying ancient civilization, essentially we don't have any documentation because they lived in economical ways. Like their ecosystem was living off the earth. So that's why we don't have the documentation because they were self-generative and everything went back into the earth and it was part of an ecosystem where we in many ways operate divorced from the ecosystem in our own little ecosystem. And so now we have the human ecosystem and the earth ecosystem, and we're caught in the middle trying to bring the two together in a way that's harmonious. And I will say, I do believe at the end of the day, I mean, we can't look back and be upset at the past. I believe advancements gave us the understanding and knowledge and literally scientifically proving God in our bodies. So, like, we need not faith for we know, and we can normalize this to make the massive impact as quick as possible. It's just still so, it's like it's almost like a crutch that we hold on to that is like we have everything we need as a society, except we're going to keep using the crutches even though we healed forever ago. Like we don't want to go back to our innate way because we're just terrified of living without the crutches.
I suspect that the solution might have something to do with using the pre-existing framework, but in a
Mm.
neutral, or at least neutral way, you know. Whereas it's been used in a negative way against us, this structure, the way everything is, it's like the eyes are already there. People are already watching and looking at that. At, you know, politicians, for example, they're not looking properly. They're just facing the television screen. But television screen, imagine just somebody being on television and on live television and saying something right and
Mhm.
having that bring out and be in the newspapers and things like that. Just little
Yeah.
glitches here and there.
And I see that we're getting ourselves primed for that in many ways too, which is different. Like, I mean, the whatever Terrence Howard podcast, like these things are hitting waves and we're making more progress and people are more open. And just the gift of Google and the world of AI research is it's making this what feels like scary world mathematical. So it is that it fits inside of the logic. I kind of said this too. It's like, how do I make quantum physics fit inside of Newtonian physics? So it is this, it fits inside of the old world framework. And we don't need to get rid of the matrix or destroy the matrix or do whatever. It's like, how do you morph that in so the matrix just is a higher embodied version? I mean, exactly what you just said. It's the neutrality of the matrix instead of trying to get rid of the matrix, which is literally the antithesis of effectiveness. Like if you're trying to get rid of something, is you're not walking in the integration and neutrality of it. Like it's holding you apart from ever getting there.
The Matrix, people have a misunderstanding of what the Matrix actually is because the Matrix is a holographic construct that exists, right? You could say that's the Earth. So it's not the Matrix that's wrong. It's the distortions that the layers of bullshit that have been placed on top of it. So that it's running on a false operating system.
Mhm.
So it's just a canvas, really.
Mhm.
So what we can do, we shine a light on the illusion, isn't it? That's what we've been doing.
Mhm.
Almost like carry on regardless. We we're just clearly like trailblazers,
Mhm.
no walking in the wrong direction with a big flashlight on our head.
Yeah.
Not bothering that nobody's paying attention because we're just going the right way for us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're going there. Oh, that's so much there. I was doing some concepts like I don't know if you've heard of the concept of the hero's journey and this process I'm trying to fold it in with We Are the Full Spectrum and like this trail blazing back to your original self. and this experience of it is trailblazing. There's no right way, like just keep taking steps in any direction. And as long as you're taking steps, which there's really no way you're not taking a step. Every single day we breathe, like when you get into the what I see is like the real mechanics of it, like it's happening with or without you. Like it's happening in spite of you. Like everything in regards to evolution, there's a force that is beyond our cognition that is bringing this about, whether we're with it or not. So it's like, how do we partner with it so we get the most out of it and actually enjoy this experience and be embodied in the journey, in the process? I've said this too before in the concept of making a movie. There's parts of the movie you don't like, and it's because of the movie parts that you don't like that the movie makes the movie the movie. Like there has to be parts that you don't like. And especially where we're at, we have a world that we look out at. And I find some ways we can go to mystical or woo-woo with the holographic concept. It's like there's still an actual universal law of physical nature. Like this, my body still is physical. So while we say it's holographic and it's an image and it's whatever, as much as it's an image, it's actual physical too. So it is both. And if I just think it's an illusion, I can dissociate from the actual whatever the actual physicalness of this too. And so yes, it is an illusion because it's a perception. It's just also really physical. Like someone's really going to die today. Like that's a fact. And we have the power to bring about life. And so if we have the power to bring about life and we're not using it, like it's just that it's just perpetuating the disassociation, perpetuating the disempowerment that we were born on this earth to be empowered. So like how do you get connected to that? Also, I'm at the 7 minute mark, just FYI on the time too there.
I've got 1% battery, so my
Okay,
phone's probably.
perfect. We can drop when it drops.
I think it's just about, yeah, like you say, yes, it's an illusion. But speaking about the fact that it's an illusion is also an illusion because there's no reference of the word God, love, righteousness, truth within that, right? So you can shout that till the cows come home. It doesn't
Yeah.
make any difference. It doesn't, the illusion doesn't go, oh no, they're onto us.
That's so true. You caught me. Oh no. It's like, yeah, it is what it is. We did what we did. We can't take back what's been done. It's how do we empower ourselves to be with the duality and this I've said it too in some ways, it's not necessarily non-duality. Like there's going to be the full spectrum and being able to be with the full spectrum, you can quote unquote get out of duality. There just also is extremes on both sides. And until we hold those extremes and neutralize them, like there's going to be extremes and that balance and harmony that's being worked out on the planet with or without us, we're just simply choosing to participate. And I really want to speak for myself and really circle us back from the beginning. How do we participate in a way that serves our nervous system and ourselves so we are not hurting ourselves in the process of participation? And it is this very, for me, very clear tightrope with my nervous system of to participate and affect change without impacting myself in a way that unhinges me to where I'm disabled or unfunctional or, this like what can I take on without having it be a 2 week recovery process because I sacrificed my well-being.
Yeah. Well, we've seen historically to like the extreme, what that sort of thing where, martyrdom or
Mhm.
people get killed for making a point of standing up and speaking about certain things. And it's like, okay, yeah, so we have to be a bit more gentle because otherwise that's if you talk about the illusion too much, if you make it a point, then you might just get killed just to prove the point that it is a physical reality, right?
Exactly, yes. You talk like it's an illusion, except it's very real when you do that. And I do see up until now, it was the martyrdom to really draw attention and to affect change. And there's, that whole historical prophets have more power once they're dead. And I really truly see, especially with the invention of the internet and where we're at now in 2020 and having space to come together in community, we now no longer have to do the martyrdom. We can actually do it from joy and celebration. And much of my embodiment from July 4th, 2022, like we crossed the finish line. Heaven is here. How do we translate this? Like we made it, it's here. And how do you stay in that space? Because your neurological reality is going to vortex you back into the illusion of hell. And how do you just keep creating the reality as the creator with more people and building that momentum and just keep going. And it is here. More of us get it. I just know there's thousands of millions of people who know this to be true. It's just how do we have the confidence so it's not the martyrdom and it's actually that empowered ecosystem of like, fuck yes, we're good. And if we're not, we're going to discover what's needed and not wasting our suffering, not wasting our life because we've been doing it an island unto ourselves in a way.
Yeah, it is clearly difficult because we carry the embodiment of heaven. Our energy field
Mhm,
equals heaven.
mhm,
We're surrounded by hell.
mhm,
And the more you go around trying to touch hell with
mhm,
heaven,
mhm.
the more there's more risk of you getting infected, right? Basically, because everything is information, and there's a lot of information floating around out there. You walk past information every time you walk past a human being, all of that. So it's just stay inward, stay
Mhm.
inward, inward as much as possible. That's all we can do, really.
And I'll say this too for those that are in that quote unquote heaven space wanting to affect change. And it's much like you can watch my embodiment of it. Like I do lean in to simply what happens when you put a fork in a toaster. It's gonna do this. Like I know the impact, and I just found for myself that the fear inside of hell will do such crazy extreme things at the perception of outside coming in and breaking it down. And so just like for me, it's like if people want to quote unquote fuck around and find out, by all means do it. Just know that it's going to be fork and toaster. It's going to have a dramatic effect. And you can't expect someone in there. And also I've came up with this concept too of like multi-dimensional ableism. It's really abusive to actually take someone who's ignorant inside of that and treat them like they're dumb. Like they can't see. Like there's no way for them to see. I personally, what my desire is to go in after leaders who talk like they're in duality, outside of duality. That whole, like, it's more of the spiritual leaders who preach like they know this language when their embodiment isn't there. That's the conversations I like to lean into, looking at people, the parents or the grandparents or whatever who have been programmed into this, like treating them like shit is actually a form of abuse in my personal opinion, because they've never had access to, they didn't have, that impact to be able to learn. And so how do we normalize it so it can be seen on the news, so it can be normalized, so we can reach them and coming from a different angle compared to full frontal attack, which is just going to always backfire.
Yeah, it seems impossible because you're probably talking about words, right? Words have an impact, but we've been programmed with definitions for words, or our understanding of words is different, or it has been. So it's almost like words can't really do much. So
That
now we talk about actions, but then if I'm immediately thinking about how money is needed to action anything in this life.
Oh, there's so much there. I could dig forever. We're under less than a minute, and just the concept of open. I think your phone just went off, so perfect timing. Big love to you. Thanks for those that show up. As always, more to come as we keep going forth. Big love to you. Link down below if you want to be on the podcast, have a conversation. We'd love to have you here. Peace, love, happiness as always, and we are changing the world. What I want to say is with or without you, and the invitation is with you. And we'd like to change the world with you, whatever you're up to. We want to know. We'd love to learn. Love to have you on the podcast. Again, peace, love, happiness. Take care.